So we're going to reduce the number of colors in this. I have a new layer, and I'm going to grab the magic wand tool. I have sample all layers on, so it is going to select the layer below this as well. Right now I'm only picking up a few pixels. Why is that? Who can tell me why am I only picking up a few pixels with the magic wand tool? Where do I adjust how many colors it picks up when you click? Anyone remember?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's that's maybe for Illustrator. Yeah, it is the tolerance. I'm so glad I waited because you did know out there. The answer was out there. It's the tolerance. Right now the tolerance is at 0. So wherever I click, it is only picking up other pixels that are exactly that same exact color. There's no room for like margin in there or whatever, room for error. So we need to raise the tolerance. We can go up to like 255 or something, but we'll raise it to 50, and that's looking a lot better. Like it has a lot more of my brown. And you can always hold shift and click again. Like it didn't pick up this one, like maybe lighter spot or whatever, and you can click there until you get it. It hates it, doesn't want to pick up that spot. There we go. Also, having contiguous unchecked means that it picks up all of that color in the layer, right? Contiguous, like the contiguous United States, right? That's the only other time you hear that word, means touching. So if contiguous is checked, if contiguous is checked, hold on. I did something wrong. Okay. What I had done wrong is my paint bucket also had all layers checked. So when I filled it with all layers and shut off my first layer, you could see how textured this is because the paint bucket also has a tolerance. So the paint bucket is also color sensitive. So you have to, we have to make sure that all layers is unchecked, right? And then it'll fill all the way up to the edge and it won't have any holes or textures in it, like that, okay? Right, when all layers was on, it was picking up the texture of the grain, which maybe you want to keep some of that texture, but it's a lot easier, or well, at least in this case, I was thinking we would keep it pretty solid. So let's try to pick up some of the black, and we will fill that in. I'm gonna actually trash this whole layer because anti-aliasing was on. Do you guys remember what happens when anti-aliasing is on? Oops, we don't want to delete that one. No, no one remembers anti-aliasing? Yeah, so it wasn't going to be 100% smooth. I can back up so we still have that layer, and when we zoom in, see it's added a layer of like light pixels around my solid color, and I don't want it to do that. So everything has to have anti-aliasing unchecked, which is sometimes quite annoying to accomplish. So your magic wand tool should have anti-aliasing unchecked, which I cannot seem to do. Your paint bucket tool should also have anti-aliasing unchecked, and you should be on its own layer, and you should not be sampling all the layers. And now if we zoomed in on these pixels, we would see that they have a hard edge and that there aren't any random pixels of other colors in there because anti-aliasing was unchecked on all the tools I'm using. And then we just have the gray left. Click on the gray. maybe we want less tolerance on the gray. If it's picking up too much in the picture, you can always lower the tolerance and it'll pick up less, right? It's very customizable, and we will just hold Alt and fill this on the next layer. So now we have our broom motif, but there's only those 4 colors in it, black, white, and gray. And it annoyingly added this gray pixel around the outside, and I definitely could have done more to stop that. But when I'm teaching, I get kind of lazy here. So like if we stepped back to before we filled, you can so I can actually see my history here. I don't use this that often, but sometimes you do want to make sure that you're stepping back exactly to when we last used the paint bucket, right? And we can get rid of all of this these random pixels that are selected. Can you guys see those? There's yeah. We can get rid of them just by using the lasso tool and holding Alt, and that will subtract from the selection. So anywhere where we know there's no gray, we can just get rid of it. And that'll just lead it to be a little bit cleaner. In Photoshop, a lot of the time you are just fighting stray pixels, and it can be pretty lame. It's not Illustrator is a lot better for this type of thing, especially where you can auto trace. It's just something that you can do in here, and I should address.
Wait, can you just do color select and select the white and delete that?
Yeah, you totally. Well, you mean from this original picture? Yeah, you could, but what it's going to leave behind is gray pixels that happen in between, and all of these different colors in here. So if your intention is to really have only the black, whites, and orange pixels and no in-between colors, this is how you have to accomplish it. Which a lot of times in textile design, this is the goal, because then you could isolate these colors and make your screens out of them super easily. So we could just easily select every single pixel of orange or brown or whatever. Even if the tolerance is on 0, we should be able to select every single pixel and make it its own screen, make it its own roller. All these ways we get things onto fabric. So let me do that really quickly with something that maybe only has 2 colors, we'll do the ring, and then we will make these into a repeating pattern really quick. I'll do all these. I'm just going to File, New, and because I've copied that, it automatically makes a file that's the correct size, and we just need to raise the tolerance on my selection, and we can easily start getting these colors in here. And I'm just going to do maybe just black and white.
So when you hold Alt, does this select all the colors?
I held Shift, and yes, it selected other colors using that. So I could definitely clean this up more. I could come in with my pencil tool and get rid of these weird moments between these, right? I could spend a lot of time editing things and making sure that they were in fact pixel perfect. If I've never addressed it, I think that I have, but if I haven't, the pencil tool and the brush tool do slightly different things. The pencil tool always makes edges that are hard, the same color, they are pixel, they're red all the way up to the edge of the brush. Even if we raise the size of the brush, it's always making pixels, it's never adding any gray pixels or whatever. The brush smooths things out, so even if the hardness of the brush is on 100%, where you would think it's only giving me the color that I want, it doesn't, it adds gray pixels in. So if you're ever doing any editing and you're wanting to make sure that you're not adding in any of these gray pixels, right, like you just should be using the pencil tool and not the brush tool. You can also change the eraser to function like a pencil by changing the mode in the properties panel. So you can change it to pencil. Right now, my eraser is on brush, and even if it's on like a hard round brush setting, it's still adding gray pixels in when you erase. If you want it to add in no gray pixels, you gotta change the mode to pencil, right? And that gets rid of all the gray pixels. And again, the gray pixels, it's annoying to have them because when you grab your magic wand tool or whatever and go to select, see it selects every single pixel in these dots that I made. But in this one, it like only selects like less than half of the dot I made, right? So it is important to consider these things, especially if I was going to then do any recoloring of this, right? So let's get rid of this and let's make my repeating pattern really quick. So I'm gonna just make a new file that is like the size that I think it should be. Let's make like a 5 by 4 inch pattern or something like that. Maybe that'll be too big and we can always crop it down. But I'm just gonna bring my motifs in here. Oh no, that'll be fine. And I'm going to adjust, well, no, I want them all on the same layer. I can adjust them in a second if I need to. And we'll also copy this and put them in there. So I'm going to arrange these into like a composition that I think is nice. And then we're going to make a straight repeats out of them by using the filter other offsets function like we have for the textured ones, right? So designing, you know, like this works perfectly well until you want to address kind of like your lineups and your alleyways in your holes, right? We want to be able to see the center of the function or of the pattern. We want to be able to see the seams of the pattern. I mean, right now we can only see kind of the face of it. So I'm using Command T to just be able to adjust some of these things. Right, even though these are all on the same layer, when I draw around them with the selection tool and then switch to the move tool, I can move them on their own. All right, last piece here. And maybe one more, we'll copy and paste this jewel. Okay, so I then want to put these all on the same layer just because it will be easier to apply the filter other offset. So where I've copied and pasted things and added new layers, I'm just going to right click and choose merge layers, and now they're all on one. I could easily fill the background a different color. It doesn't matter at this point, but we right now just don't have anything that's like going off the edge at all, and that looks kind of lame. So I am going to go to filter other offset and try to adjust. I like to zero these out first. And then we adjust how it moves until we can see that center seam, right? And in that center seam, we can then place more motifs or adjust these motifs so that they like kind of fill those holes the best we can. Okay. So I can just kind of like, you know, move these things. Copy and paste new ones in there, right? Maybe we want another jewel. We can always copy and paste from this layer. can, you know, make it smaller, rotate it. Anything we do, the one rule is really just that we don't want to touch the edges, because the edges right now are seamless from one side to the other, right? Where this stick goes off on the right, it comes on the left. So we can just adjust until we think, you know, it looks right, and we can, maybe we need one more thing like right up here, maybe another ring. And then we will have our seamless repeat as soon as we have addressed these holes. And even before, you know, it would have been a pattern if we had just defined it. So defining the patterns in Photoshop is pretty straightforward. You go to Edit, Define Pattern, and then you're like, well, where does it live? And to be able to see the pattern, we need to make a layer, a new fill layer, which you can do under the Layer tab up here. Layer, New Fill Layer, Pattern. And if we add it to this page, you can, and it totally works. We just need to make sure that we scale it down so we can actually see the repeats of the pattern, right? And make sure it is above all my artwork. Oh, it's not seamless. I wonder what I did wrong.
It's just corner. Yeah, the corner. You see the triangle. You see it at what the broom is?
Yeah, but it's in every repeat. So like when I made this, somehow I did something wrong. Maybe when I cropped it. I don't know what I did wrong, unfortunately. Filter other offset like didn't preserve the seamless edges like it normally does. Well, maybe all the steps were pretty much right. I don't know. Oh well, yeah.
So, like, when you first make the first, you know, template, the first square.
Yeah.
What do you do after that to make it into a pattern? Like, do you click something, or do you just?
Yeah. So.
Because I still don't know.
Hold on.
You just move the square and it's like.
All right, so there's offset. So there's where I merge the layers. Okay, so let me do a take two, just really quick. I merged the layers, and this hopefully will answer your question too. I merged the layers, and then right now, I could define this as a pattern by going to Edit, Define Pattern. Like, you can define anything as a pattern. You could take a tiger head and put it in the middle of a page in Photoshop and define it as a pattern, and then you would have that as a pattern. It just lives in Photoshop's pattern library, which is kind of hidden. In order to access it, there are a few ways, but my favorite way is to actually like make like a standard artboard size so we can really know what it looks like. So we could make an 11 by 17, right? Because making a new layer on like a really small page isn't that helpful. So 11 by 17, we at least know what the size is like. And then layer, new fill layer, pattern, and we can see our pattern. But this is the one I just defined. So it does have these lines in it because we didn't do that filter other offset step yet, which didn't work for some reason also on when I last tried it. But that is how you access a pattern, right? We could define just this as a pattern, Edit, Define Pattern, and then layer, new fill layer pattern. And it's transparent, which is interesting. But we can just choose also between these other patterns we've defined. And you can adjust the size in here, which is nice. There are other ways to fill with patterns. Like if I just select the whole page and go to Edit Fill on its own, on like a normal layer. Edit Fill will also offer you, normally we've used this for the content aware. That's how I've demonstrated it before. But you can also choose pattern, and then you can choose from this weird library of patterns that I have built during demos here. So that's another way, is just Edit Fill, and then you choose pattern. Building half drops is more complicated. We can talk about it sometime, but straight repeats, you should, I'm back on my single repeats that I was kind of defining here. We should just be able to go to filter other offsets, and what it should be doing is wrapping the pixels around left to right, but something's not working with it. It seems like, or at least it wasn't a second ago. It's like it's lost a couple pixels here. I'm gonna try cropping it and hitting enter. Yeah, see? Okay. There on the left here, there's like a bunch of random extra space that was hidden. So I used the crop tool, which allows you to adjust the size of your art in order to make sure that it is actually that size. And now filter other offset should work. I'm not sure why that happens. I've had that happen once before. So now the center is there, and we can choose our random motifs, and we could, make and define them. Hopefully that's making sense why we're doing this step. Just because it's going to look better, right? Maybe you're more comfortable in Photoshop. Maybe you've been struggling with Illustrator, and like this would be a good option for you. I don't know. I sometimes do design motifs this way, and then you can like bring them into Illustrator, right? Okay, so when we now define this pattern, we should have filled in, some of those holes a little bit. And maybe in a repetitive way. Maybe I would have liked to use more repeats or whatever, more motifs. But we are, getting closer. So we'll do one more. There. We'll make it smaller. So now when we go to edits, define pattern, where we had this hole in the middle of this pattern before, we'll turn on this one. We'll now see with our new layer, our new pattern, that we don't have that hole as much. Still not going to be a perfect pattern. And I can edit the pattern that's on a layer just by double clicking on this little thumbnail, the pattern layer thumbnail. You can always double click on a lot of thumbnails in Illustrator. So you can kind of compare the difference between like the lineup in that one to kind of, it's a bit more fluid in this pattern. You still have a stripe with like the broomsticks. That was never gonna be any other way. So bringing this pattern then into Spoonflower, I wanted to start off with a Photoshop pattern because it's so straightforward to bring this into Spoonflower. Do you guys know what Spoonflower is? First off? So shout out if you know what it is. No one knows.
Well, it's like this fabric site that you can upload your patterns to and then it will print.
Yes, custom fabric can be printed through Spoonflower, exactly. So I have done whole collections ordering through Spoonflower, and they
Is it expensive?
it can be expensive. It's definitely
Probably based on the amount of color that's rated.
it's not. They are digitally printing everything, so you can't, like, it really doesn't matter. So any kind of limiting colors is going to be just up to you, like, and your aesthetic, really, if you're ordering through Spoonflower. Yeah, it's so we can look at the prices here in a second, but it's definitely like the higher end of fabric prices. You know, like it's a $20 cotton, you know, a $20 yard cotton kind of thing. We'll look at prices in a second.
A yard.
Yeah, $20 a yard cotton. It's expensive.
Give my old foods.
So, you can order other people's fabric too, and you can order the Spoonflower color map, which takes up 1 yard of fabric, and we have the color map over there. So remember last week we talked about print colors and how dramatically different they are, especially when printed onto fabric. So let's choose upload your design and see what they're looking for, which is a TIFF, a JPEG, a PNG. If for some reason they also accept a GIF, it seems weird. But because this is a straight repeat and it's just like super standard here, we can just save this as a JPEG. Or a TIFF or whatever. And I always label when things are like ready to be brought into Spoonflower, right? You're gonna have to do this next year. So, you know, get on board here. Whenever it's like something that's ready to be brought into a Spoonflower, I always call it like single repeat, or I'll call it like straight repeat, single tile. And I might even say like ready for Spoonflower. I just like really want to be clear with myself that this isn't artwork, right? This isn't something that we would ever like display or like print onto paper, right? This is specifically for bringing into Spoonflower, which is looking for something that is going to tile. I don't know if it's gonna like my parentheses. Let's try and hit save. Oh, okay, it's okay with that. And we just want to save the best JPEG possible. And we can now choose that file. Hopefully I saved it somewhere useful. Hold on. Downloads.
So when you upload the JPEG,
Mm-hmm.
is it just that like square that you use to create the pattern? It's not like the box.
Yes, it is just the square, and we are going to go over how to do it in Illustrator in just a second. It's just so easy in Photoshop because all you're doing is making the square. You don't have any like extraneous artwork left over in Photoshop, so it's just more straightforward. But you're exactly right. You're only uploading the tile. And other like digital printing websites are different. We can talk about some of them in a second, but Spoonflower it really prefers you to have like a tile that is going to repeat seamlessly. So it has to process, and sometimes this can take a while if it's a really big image, but there is our image, and we have a ruler around the edges, so we can see that this is being shown on a 20 by like 18 amount, and that does correspond with the size that you choose. So it shows you what it's going to look like in the yardage that you choose. So if we just choose a test swatch, which is only 8 by 8, it looks that big. If we choose yards, right, we're going to see the repeat that many times across it. if we choose more than 1 yard, it's going to show us the whole yardage because it really wants to make sure that you're okay with what it's printing, because it is expensive, right? Pearl Signature Cotton is $17.50 per yard, so that's their cheapest. It'll probably be what most of you buy next year, and that's what that color chart is. And $17.50 per yard. So it's expensive. It's the upper end of fabric, right? But
When you ordered from it before, right?
Yeah.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Do you have sampling?
Huh?
Do you have sampling for the copy?
You know, I really should have brought in I do have like a swatch book that I've ordered from them, and I'm sorry about that. But that's from Spoonflower, like if you want to go touch that, that is the cotton. I do have, like on my Insta, my collection from last year, this was all Spoonflower fabric. So these were all like hand painted and then translated into patterns. So they were almost all made in Photoshop actually, because I was doing all like millions, like hundreds of colors patterns, because they were painted. Some of them I reduced though. So even though they look like they're like made by hand, they're just digitally printed essentially. So we could order, so what Spoonflower highly recommends is that you do order a swatch first to make sure that your colors are right, and then you can adjust your colors based on that. You can also sell your patterns on Spoonflower. I did have a lot of patterns for sale on here for a while, and then I was like, those are mine. Like, I don't want other people to be able to make stuff out of those, so I like took them off. But I still order stuff through here all the time. And I have like garments for sale through another website, but I want to talk about that website in a second. Just keep things straight right now. We're talking about Spoonflower, and you're gonna have to order through them next year if you're a fashion design major. So we're gonna go to Illustrator now, and let's see let's see what type of patterns we have first off, and we're going to learn how to bring these into Photoshop or into Spoonflower, which is probably what you're going to need to know how to do next year. Most of you are going to make your patterns in Illustrator. One thing that's great about Spoonflower is that it accepts half drops and half bricks, so you don't have to what am I trying to say? You don't have to like adjust anything. Like on some other fabric websites, you have to like make sure that everything you upload is in straight repeat, which is like another step basically. So right now it shouldn't matter what I do. So let's use my rose pattern. Spoonflower also, I feel like I've forgotten to mention that it prints at 150 pixels per inch, so that's lower quality than our paper prints, so you have a little bit more wiggle room, kind of. You can make things, if you like upload them at 300 pixels per inch, it's actually going to be twice as big as you expect, so you can always make it smaller here, but you can't make it bigger past 150 pixels per inch. That's like the lowest quality. Right? That would be really tiny. So let's bring one of these in. And this one is a half drop and it's large, so I think that'll be the most interesting. What we need to do in order to export this is to make an artboard that is the size of this rectangle, right? Artboards will only export what is directly on top of them, so that's the perfect way to make a pattern be exactly the right size. Let's try to get it to be exactly 9.875 inches and 24 inches. Let's try that. And honestly, this generally works, you should just be able to click on this rectangle. And it automatically has made a rectangle or an artboard that's exactly the same size, except that for some godforsaken reason, your patterns, your artboards cannot be 9.875. It like always rounds to 2 decimal points for some reason. And this does sometimes lead to things not lining up in the smallest of ways. So let's try it with this 0.1 off, and really hopefully it won't make a difference. But I think what it's going to do is actually it's going to add in a white pixel, I think. We will see. So we are going to export it. File, export as. We're going to export it as PNG is totally fine, and we only need, which artboard is it? We only need the last artboard, so it's artboard 7. So I just made an artboard that was the same size as my background rectangle by clicking on my rectangle with my artboard tool. That was pretty much it. The thing that is actually most important when exporting these from Illustrator is to have anti-aliasing set to none. If you have art optimized or type optimized anti-aliasing on, what Illustrator will do is add a gray pixel all the way around the edge of your tile. So not only will it create like transition pixels between the black and the orange, like that would be fine if it just did that because Spoonflower is digitally printed, so that wouldn't matter. But when it adds a gray pixel all the way around the edge of your JPEG or your PNG or whatever, that creates lines on your patterns when you go and upload it. And you won't even be able to see it when you upload it. It'll basically just be when you get Spoonflower, the fabric back, or Spoonflower might email you about that. And it's just, you have to have anti-aliasing off. So if I want to know that this is going to be exactly 24 by 9 inches or whatever it is, I can choose medium resolution because Spoonflower's highest resolution possible is 150 pixels per inch. But if I want some wiggle room and I want to see what it looks like a little bit bigger, I can choose high, and then I'll have some options. Anti-aliasing, again, should be on none. Don't know what interlaced means. Just leave that unchecked, I would say. And let's hit OK. And it's exporting. And we are going to upload this to Spoonflower. I didn't save it as anything. There it is. I should have saved this as like floral project half drop, right? Because it's a half drop. So let's upload it. It's just confirming that I own the design. You shouldn't be uploading other people's artwork onto there and getting fabric made of that. That's not cool. But all of our own artwork is great. And remember, this isn't going to actually look, oh God, this could take a while, but it isn't actually going to look right until we tell Spoonflower that it is a half drop, right? But it does give us that option of using the half drop. Is this making sense? Yeah, I've had, when I've ordered fabric for students before, they will frequently end up having this like white pixel line in here, and there are so many different reasons for that, and it does in fact look like this white pixel, like there is a white pixel line in here. So we can step back and adjust that, but first let's see what it looks like in yardage. There we go, and we're gonna tell it that it is a half drop. So things, yeah.
Would you try the one with the fourth one going with just one R?
So that centers it on your yardage. So that's like for if you were ordering like a photograph and you were gonna make like a pillow of a photograph and you didn't need it to repeat the pattern like a whole bunch of times. Which, yeah.
So it's better doing straight repeat on the upload on the Spoonflower.
Say it again. Sorry.
So it is. So if we upload the straight repeat to Spoonflower, so.
It doesn't actually matter if it's a straight or a half drop. I'm running into a problem here where they aren't aligning because my rectangle and my artboard weren't exactly the same size, which is super frustrating actually. So it's subtle, but if we zoomed in here enough, we would be able to see a misalignment, I don't know though. But it does seem like, yeah, okay, we can see it. My artboard can't have more. Yeah, so right now, this rectangle that I have selected, the background shape, has 3 decimal points. 0.875 is the decimal points. And the artboard I made behind it can only have 2 decimal points. So the artboard is technically 0.005 bigger than my rectangle right now. I don't know if any of you are paying attention to this. This is so tedious, but this is something that you would run into and have to pay attention to. So I guess I guess what I might do is, oh God, I don't know how I would address this. I would probably try just like making this a tiny bit bigger and like just accepting that my roses weren't going to be perfect, or honestly, I would like, this would be obnoxious, but I would like delete all of these and redo the transformations of the artwork, right? Because they haven't been transformed exactly the right amount, right? We would have to adjust this so this is 9.88, the same size as the artboard.
When we do that, like from the beginning, you should do
Maybe keep it to 2 decimal points from the beginning. It really would save you time. So your rectangle, that would also be great. And I have actually kind of encouraged that the whole time, that like round numbers are easier. I must have just like randomly decided that that was my width and it ended up on that 3rd. But keeping it a whole number is always easier. Yeah, I wonder if there's a setting like under preferences somewhere if we couldn't adjust how many units or like how many decimal points it could take. But it doesn't seem like, it's not jumping out at me anyway. But that would work if I redid it. Let's see what these squares look like, because I did do work on, like we could try to, so this is just 3 by 2.4. So when I click on the artboard tool, I should be able to just click on my background square and it instantly makes an artboard that is 3 by 2.4. It should be as easy as that if your decimal points are less than 2 units of measurement or whatever it's called, 2 hundredths places. So then we can just save this one as a, gotta go to export as, file export as like a JPEG or a PNG, and we just want artboard 8 in this case, and this one should come into Spoonflower fine. We just want anti-aliasing to say none. That one should upload really fast, nice and small. All right, well, we can see this one really quick. Yeah, so this one was a half brick, and it works perfectly. Yeah, it was just this rose one, the other one being designed at a weird size, I guess. So I also, I make and sell stuff through a website. Well, I sell through Etsy, but I use a website called Printful to print these leggings. The only ones I sell regularly, I think we've talked about this a little bit, are my my Celtic yoga pants, which have like hit this niche market, but I sell these through Printful. And Printful, although I don't have control over like the silhouette of the garment or anything like that, Printful will, I'm trying to get to their actual products. That's annoying, I have to sign in. Printful will put my patterns on clothing without working with, like, I don't have to work very hard at all. I just have to design the pattern, and then they will cut and sew my pattern and ship to the person who's ordered them. So someone orders these from Etsy, pays me the $59, my credit card instantly gets charged the $30 it costs for these yoga pants to be made by Printful, and then Printful ships them, makes and ships them to the customer, all in like 2 weeks, like under 2 weeks. So it's a nice passive income. It's a form of drop shipping. Drop shipping has like a wide range of definitions, but Printful garment, like cut and sew printed drop shipping, is a super interesting option. I'm just going to try to show you the products. So last year I think her name is Jen Treats. Jen started a little company through Printful after I introed this, and launched a little collection, right? I haven't had no orders in the past 28 days, but actually that's not true. There's just no active orders maybe. So let's go to their products. They always change things around though. There we go, products and pricing. So if we look at their women's clothing, they have a variety of options, but not all of them are cut and sew, right? So not all of them are all over prints. The sports bras and the swimwear and these shorts are all over prints, right? But the jackets and stuff, they would just be putting a graphic somewhere on these jackets like this. And this would be still digitally printed potentially, but it's like they don't print your fabric and then cut it out and sew it. Like with my leggings, they are printing the leggings and then cutting around the prints and then sewing them, right? So they they give you file guidelines, and these work quite a bit different than Spoonflower does. So with Printful, they are just giving you a template, right? And you have to fill this with your pattern. So here's the templates. They automatically give you a Photoshop one. I made an Illustrator template for myself. But what we would have to do is fill this layer with your artwork. And then you would save this file without the guides on top of it. And you would upload this to Spoonflower. Let's do it. I don't like this pattern very much, but we can save it as a, yeah.
So yesterday when I was playing Photoshop, whenever I make a shape, it always turns into a layer.
Yeah, they're the shapes in Illustrator
So it always
are
does that,
all
so-
like all are on there. Yeah.
And it always came out as
Like a smart object. Yeah,
Okay.
because it's made of
So
vectors.
it's normal.
Yeah, and you can just rasterize it if you need it to be made of pixels.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it is a little funky, but that's all correct.
I
Yeah.
thought my opinion was wrong.
It's broken. No, that's right. Okay, so like this guy